All right, because I'm really anxious. Let's get started. It's 10 o'clock. All right, welcome everybody. Before we get going with the presentation, if you want to just open up the video screen and take a look at all the people who are here today, we've got a really full room. And I'm really excited about that. So thanks to everyone who showed up. We were just joking we should have all dressed alike, maybe all dressed red today or something. We're really excited that you're all here and we hope to make the best of this time. So let's get started. Okay, so first, I think right now you can see my screen. So welcome to the Adaptation Planning and Practices online course. We'll be with you for the next several weeks, and this will be a very familiar landing page to you. We'll try to begin every Tuesday at the same time, 10 o'clock, and we're hoping to have a 30-minute session, but some weeks it might just go a little bit longer. So if that's the case, we'll go over how you can find the recording and whatnot throughout this session. But first, um, if you haven't used Zoom before, it is sometimes really easy to find that you are unmuted when you think that you're muted. So right now, if you want to just take the opportunity to see if your audio is on, and if you don't mind, please press mute right now, and that will help us just avoid any weird feedback and terrible noises. And you never know who's going to pop in your office and want to have a conversation. So if you keep yourself muted, we can avoid that for everyone else. All right. So also, if you have your webcams, just feel free to turn them on. It's really nice to actually see a face and see people in the room. Um, and yeah, welcome. So again, if you haven't used Zoom before, we just want to introduce you to some of the technology. And this will be the central platform for all of our lectures and our discussions. So it's really good just to get used to it. It can be uncomfortable if you haven't ever used it before. We're going to ask you to hover at the bottom of your screen and find that little chat bubble and click on it. If you don't mind, test it out. Send a message to the whole group. Just say hi, type your name, type your organization. If in the future during these courses you want to send us, me, Danielle Shannon, or the other co-lead for this course, Maria Genoviak, a note specifically, just find us in the drop down where it says to, and you can find us and send us a message directly. But we will be using this technology very frequently in our lecture and discussion. So it's nice to see you. I see a bunch of people are just greetings and salutations all across the Midwest and Northeast. So welcome. So like I said before, we're trying to make this easy for you. We're doing things a little bit differently this year, but over the years since we've been doing this online course, we found that anytime we record the session, it's very handy for those who are part of the course and might be running late or might have to leave the lecture or discussion early. So we're going to do our best to make sure each session is recorded and then posted online. And after each session, we'll send you an email so that you'll have that link right in your inbox and you can get to it when you need to. As you're looking around the room today and look through those videos, you'll see a couple of the same faces featured on this screen in the little chat bubble. Some of us have different hairdos, but we're all the same. Many of the people that are on this screen will be leading the lectures and will definitely be participating in your individual discussion sessions. So Maria and I, Maria Genoviak and Danielle Shannon, shown here, are the course leads, but we're definitely not the only people that will interact with you throughout this course. Many of the people who are pictured here will, again, participate very interactively with you. So if any of the folks, I know Kristen Schmidt and Patricia Leopold and Todd Ontel are here today. If you just want to wave to the crowd, you can see that we're all here and we're all really excited. So if you want to learn more about our backgrounds, you can go to forestadaptation.org/team and you can learn more about us and see the kind of work that we do. When we get to our discussion sessions after this call and on Wednesday, we'll spend more time introducing ourselves and learning more about you as well. So, who are we? I guess I should have started with this slide long ago in the beginning of my babbling part of this lecture. We are all staff at the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. We're an organization that really spans the boundary between academic research and practical information that supports land managers to make decisions. So, we're supported by several different organizations, and the Forest Service is one of our primary supporters. But there are other organizations that are part of our charter and really help to be the foundation for our partnership and support and the perspectives that we have on the land. And that's, Michigan Tech University, which is my employer, University of Minnesota, American Forest, the University of Vermont, the National Council for Air and Stream Improvement, and the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. So, we are an organization that has many different perspectives and minds surrounding the issues of natural resource management, climate change, and carbon management. Our organization is also part of a national effort by the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, to also think about climate change and how we can help build capacity within the department, but also to ensure that private landowners and woodland owners and other natural resource managers are receiving the same type of support across the country. So within the Midwest and the Northeast, our organization, NIAX, supports our own climate hub. And so we are leaders of the USDA Northern Forest Climate Hub. The region that we span is 20 states wide between the Northeast and the Midwest. It's a very forested area. It's actually 42% of all the forests in the US and has a huge portion of the population, about 41%, and also is very parceled. So there's a significant portion of privately owned forests within this footprint. And so the USDA Climate Hubs really gives us even more capacity and energy to work with all stakeholders and all lands across this region. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to start by kicking things off with welcomes and introductions and continuing that conversation through an overview of the course and setting some expectations for what you might experience in this course and how things might work. Then we're going to transition into exploring what the first step of this course looks like and why we would even, how we're going to approach and how we're going to be thinking about step one in the adaptation workbook. And then finally, we're going to end with a little walkthrough of the adaptation workbook itself. For those who've never used it, it doesn't hurt to sort of get a little head start in thinking about the platform itself. So let's get moving. The course objectives, I think many of you might already be aware, or this might be why you came to this course. The course objectives themselves are to help you integrate climate change into real-world land management projects, those that are focused on forest management in rural and urban areas and coming from a variety of perspectives, from conservation or timber or cultural uses. Our objectives are to really give you the tools and to help set that framework so that you can start integrating, local considerations of how climate change will affect the lands that you manage, how climate change will affect your management goals and objectives, and help you sort of start questioning those potential challenges and potential opportunities that might arise into the future. We're hoping that through this course you will feel confident and empowered to develop your own specific actions that will help you respond to climate change and the potential effects on the project area that you're managing. And in the end, we hope that you'll walk away with your own climate-informed project, with your own climate adaptation plan that will complement whatever your existing management plans are. But really, in the end, we want you to use this opportunity to, start testing out and learning how to communicate with your stakeholders. Everything that you will do throughout the adaptation workbook process will sort of create that little elevator pitch for you as you're starting to test out and learn how to communicate with those around you. The really cool part about this course is that you'll have total access to all of the individuals that I had on that slide, and any type of training support that you need during the course or thereafter. We're here for you, and sort of very undivided attention is given to all of those that are in this course. The course itself consists of 7 sessions. The sessions span over several weeks from now through March, with actually one vacation week. And you can find all of the dates and the meeting times listed in the Getting Started guide. And if you don't have access to that, just let us know, and we'll resend that. I'm pretty sure Maria attached an additional copy to the email this morning as well. If you don't think that you'll be able to attend one of the lectures or the discussion, we would really appreciate just a heads up on that. And you can email Maria or I or any of the other course leads, and that will be really helpful. Try, for those that are part of a group, if you can have at least one person from your project attend all of the sessions, that will really ensure consistency, and that will be a really clear connection for your group, and you won't maybe feel as lost into the future. We're doing things a little bit differently this year, and I'm going to go over this in another slide, but we're going to ask that for those who would like continuing education credits, that you really keep track of your attendance. And in the end of the course, we'll do an accounting of all of the classes that you've attended, and of course, you'll only receive continuing education credits for the classes that you've attended. So it's in your best interest to attend as many sessions as you can. And again, after the course, if you need help, we're always here to help you. How the class is set up: we'll have a big class session like we're having right now with the lecture session. They'll be about 30 minutes recorded and will occur every Tuesday. Thereafter, we'll have a longer discussion unit, and that will be focused on more of those core concepts of forestry or urban forestry and forested watershed management, and will be divided into 2 sessions on Tuesday and on Wednesday. And I think all of you have been assigned your course discussion session. And if you don't recall what that is, just try to email Maria or I, and we'll remind you. So again, we will all attend mandatory the weekly lecture, and then we'll split out into one of the 2 discussion groups, Tuesday or Wednesday. So just look in your email for your assignment. Other things: this is a course. We're gonna have homework. Don't be scared, it'll be fun, and it really complements your primary assignment, which is to make progress and move through the adaptation workbook each week. So every assignment is just moving through one of the 5 steps of the adaptation workbook. We'll review your work in our discussion sessions, so we're asking that everyone complete their homework by Monday before the next course, before the next lecture on Tuesday. So if you can get it done on Monday, that would be super helpful. And this would allow us, this gives us a really nice opportunity to pull together all of your responses and then present those as a nice summary for everyone else in the course to see where the rest of the folks are at. And you only have to complete 1 homework per group. Okay, so the big course expectation is that we want you to be engaged. This is a really hard format to have an engaging course, an engaging discussion on an online platform. And I think all of you guys are well aware of what a boring webinar feels like, and we don't want to have that. So to the best of your abilities, if you can be honest and try to stay engaged, we'll try to keep you engaged and keep things up and spirited. So on your part, if you can close your email, mute your cell phone, shut your door, tell your coworkers that, hey, you're occupied for this time each week, it will really help the rest of the class and keep that energy moving. And lastly, you're also here to network and collaborate and learn from your classmates. So we hope that you feel open and you recognize that this is a safe space to share ideas and struggles. We're going to go over this in the discussion units, but I don't think that they'll be recorded. So it will be totally open, and we just hope that you'll be really honest and feel like you can contribute to the best of your abilities. And lastly, just a reminder about the continuing education credits. What you need to do is keep track of your own attendance at lecture and discussion. Just write it down, have an Excel spreadsheet or something. And at the end of the course, we'll gather all of your attendance and then give you your certificates and supply the Society of American Forests and the International Society of Arboriculture the attendance sheets so that they know who attended, and you'll be able to get your credits. If there's other organizations that you would like us to apply for, just let us know, email us, and send us a note, and we'll try to get that in order to get you some credits as well. Okay, so that's all I had for right now. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? Okay, I'll hand it over to Maria.
All right. All right, let me get set up here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Genoviak. I'm also, as Danielle said, with NIACS, and I'll be your co-instructor on this course, and then also helping coordinate the Wednesday session lectures. All right, so what we wanted to do is just provide a little bit of overview of a couple core ideas, just set some definitions, and then we'll go right into this week's kind of task and activity, and so we'll be able to hit the ground running. So first is adaptation. Adaptation, is the main topic of this course, and so we wanted to just take a moment to define it. And so adaptation is the adjustment of systems in preparation to or in response to climate change. And, oh, it's being a little finicky on me. Hang on a second. And really the idea here is that you're intentionally thinking about climate change impacts and vulnerabilities and addressing those in order to meet your goals and objectives. One thing is that as people think about adaptation is that they don't always know what that looks like on the ground. That's essentially the topic of this course and where we're really going to dive deep. But I think one thing to realize is that ecosystem-based adaptation activities are going to be really well aligned with sustainable forest management, conservation, restoration, a lot of activities that many of you are already involved with through your work. And so essentially through adaptation, what we're doing is we're bringing that intentional consideration of climate change into the mix as well. And so when we think about that, that means that adaptation can be a lot of times we'll find and discover through this process that you might be doing a lot of the same activities that you have been through your current work, but we'll just find that climate change makes them more important. Other activities might end up needing small tweaks to address particular stressors or threats or vulnerabilities that you have to your systems, ways to make things better over time. And then, there might be some component of identifying new and different actions, even those that might seem wild or crazy or different than what we typically would have done as we think about climate change. And so, really all of these actions are on the table, and we just wanted to reiterate that we don't really know what that balance of will be for your particular project until we go through this process, but we'll be uncovering that, and a lot of times it means that by intentionally thinking about climate change, you maybe, but aren't necessarily having to do, a complete 180 from your current management. And so we'll be taking that climate change filter and using it to think about how you can make your the work that you're doing more important and more responsive to climate change. The tool that we'll be using throughout this entire process is a set of resources that we developed called the Forest Adaptation Resources, or the FAR. And this was originally a guidebook that we published in 2012. We reprinted it, expanded it, and did a second edition in 2016. But essentially it's a compilation of different resources you can use in your work to think about climate change. And we've actually then kind of continued growing the set of resources and built them into what is the Adaptation Workbook website. So the Adaptation Workbook website is essentially the online version of the forest adaptation resources, and the paper version can be really helpful as a reference, and you can get the PDF online. What we'll be using from this is the adaptation strategies and approaches, which we'll introduce more in later sessions of this course, and then the adaptation workbook, which is kind of the fundamental process that we'll be using to think about climate change and how to integrate climate change into your management through this course. So the adaptation workbook is a 5-step process. And we will be, essentially our course will be moving through 1 step per week. And then the last 2 weeks will be tying up your project and thinking about how to move them forward into implementation and how to communicate your projects, things like that, towards the end of the course. So we'll go through this entire process. I'm not going to talk about it today. Today we'll just be talking about defining those management objectives. I guess a little tease is that next week when we'll talk about assessing climate impacts and vulnerabilities, we'll be pulling in resources related to vulnerability assessments, climate change information, other resources. And then later on we'll be, like I said, bringing in those menus of adaptation strategies and approaches and diving into those in a lot more detail. So this has been a really effective way for people to think about climate change. I think there's a couple of reasons. One is that, you know, if you look at this process, it's really just the same process we use for maybe developing forest management plans or any sort of planning process or adaptive management. It's a very familiar cycle for those of us who are natural resource professionals. And essentially what we've done is we've taken a pretty typical planning or adaptive management process, and then just inserted climate change into each step. So that way it makes climate change less overwhelming, and we can just deal with it piece by piece as we go through that process. That's what we'll be doing with all of you. We've used this, like I said, we've developed it a number of years ago, and we've been working hands-on with natural resource professionals from a variety of different land ownerships, different organization types for many years. And so we have hundreds of examples where people have gone through various trainings to use the adaptation workbook. These are projects that have come out of each one of these dots is a project that's come out of an 1.5 to 2 day in-person course or the online courses we've been holding over the past couple years. And so each one of these is a very different example of what climate change looks like on the ground. And it's really helpful to being able to think about the wide variety of responses to climate change, because everybody's response is going to be different based in a particular place and the management objectives associated with that place. We also have on our website taken a large number of these, of the total number of adaptation projects that have been developed out of the workbook, and featured these on our website, where each one of these dots is a case study that people can use to better understand how a particular person or organization is responding to climate change. And so this is something we're going to be encouraging you to look at, so you can see maybe in your state or area or related to your particular ecosystem or topic of interest. You can look up these adaptation demonstrations and see what other people are doing. And we really hope that by continuing through this course that you would also be interested in sharing your story, your project, so that other people can again see what these are and really come away with just a lot more ideas and really helping just people wrap their heads around what climate change adaptation looks like on the ground. And so we love having these, because if somebody comes to us and says that they're working in a particular place on a particular topic, we have essentially all of these case studies in our back pockets so that we can tell people, oh yeah, you should check out what so-and-so is doing. It might have some really great lessons for you. So we definitely hope that you take advantage of this, and then also consider, and we'll circle back towards the end of the course, participating in this as well. So I'll take a minute to stop and see if there are any questions at this stage. It also helps me take a breath because I forget to breathe. All right, so next I'm going to dive right into step 1 of the adaptation workbook. Like I said, we'll be going week by week through an individual step. If you ever have questions about a particular step, go to that Forest Adaptation Resources document. And there are, I don't have it one in reach, but there are actual instructions that describe each step. And so there's about 2 pages for each step that detail, what the purpose of that step is and all of the components. And there are also prompts on the little hovers in the tool that you can use to get that detail as well. But if, like I said, that paper document is a great reference. So step 1 is just about defining your project. You all submitted really great projects as part of your registration where we essentially had you draft step 1. So you guys are already well along your way to doing this. And we wanted to do that so we had both a sense of your project and had you thinking about that ahead of time, but then also because then by drafting it, we can now help you refine that. So it's going to be a good fit for this class, and we're going to set it up so you're going to be able to succeed down the line. So the purpose again of step 1 is just to define where you're working and what are your management goals and objectives for an area. What are you trying to achieve? So when you pick your project, and again, you guys have already essentially come in with a project identified, at least preliminarily. What we're looking for is 2 things. One is we're really encouraging you to pick a real world project from your job, because this course takes time and we want to make sure you get as much out of it as possible. So we want you to pick something up off your desk that you're currently working on, maybe a project that's been kind of one you've been wanting to get around to. Is often a good one for climate change because it gives you an excuse to kind of sit back and think about it a little bit more. So we definitely want these to be real world projects as much as you can. And then we want to make sure that they're a good size for the online course format. The weekly format does go quick in our experience. That's why we added that 1 week in the middle, is just to give people a breather in case there's a sickness or a snow day in the mix that kind of throws off somebody's schedule. But it goes pretty quick, and so we don't want something that's going to be too big that you just find yourself getting behind and you're not able to follow through. All right, so what we would typically consider too big is just something that's physically big in terms of a large ownership or district or a geography. Typically, I'm used to really dealing with the forest management projects. Typically, if we're talking about a project like that, if I start to see, thousands, high hundreds or thousands of acres, I start to get nervous for this course unless it's a very homogeneous system, because we just start to get a lot of complexity. And then also many complex goals. If it's a really big project, that can just get really cumbersome down the line, because we want you to think about how your goals are affected by climate change. And if you have 30 goals, it can be really overwhelming. So it's not to say that you can't use the adaptation workbook for those projects. We've definitely used the adaptation workbook for very large projects. It just might not be the best format for the online course. So for those of you who have a bigger area, whether that's maybe a state forest, many people that have a watershed level project, what we'll want you to do is think about, maybe can you take a portion of that project and use it for the online course, and then you can kind of circle back around and then build it out later on. So we find that sizes that work best is maybe a plan for a few or several stands or a wood lot, a timber sale. These are kind of for the forest management projects. For an urban project, it might be a nature area in a community, or a neighborhood, or a fairly discrete area. And then again, kind of one or a few forest types or issues in an area of ownership. So again, I'm kind of thinking on the order of tens to a few hundred acres in general is sort of where I think about these projects. Now, the simpler the project is conceptually, the bigger the acreage can be, the more complex it is conceptually, you might want to shrink the acreage. So it's a sliding scale, but essentially what we're looking for is something where we're going to have maybe a few management units and a few goals and objectives for those management units. So, and I'll come back and we'll have time again for questions. We start to get too small, maybe if you're at like a small backyard, certainly you can think about this for a small ownership. I've done, thought about it for 3 acres at my house to go through the process, and it works, but you might also kind of mentally need to kind of replicate that across as if it were, kind of mentally blow it up to an operational scale if you find at some point that it's a little too small. So these are flexible. We'll have more time, and this can be something we can delve into in the discussion later today and tomorrow in the discussion sessions. And again, we'll have Q&A in just a few minutes to circle back on this. But yeah, we're looking for that kind of Goldilocks zone of something you can finish, but isn't too, is big enough that it's real, but not so big you can't finish it. Okay, so then once you kind of define that, in the adaptation workbook, there's going to be split into 2 steps, and Danielle will go through the actual adaptation workbook part for this. But the first part, step 1.1, is you're essentially setting up what's called management topics. But these are the management, the forest types, the management topics, essentially the units that you'll use in your project. So if you're doing a forest management plan, this might be the forest types or the stands. If you're doing a neighborhood, it might be the difference between a nature area and then the street trees in that, a natural area and the street trees. If you're doing a watershed, it might be cover types. So you can come into this from a couple different directions. One is that you'll have some predefined forest types or management topics based on whether you select a forest, urban or forested watershed project. So if you're forest or forest watershed project, you'll get forest types. If you're an urban project, you'll get land uses. And there'll be some predefined types like northern hardwood forest, things like that. Otherwise, you can develop your own, and these are called custom. And so you might think about things that you're specifically interested in, like wood turtle habitat, or the areas affected by hemlock woolly adelgid, or a really common one we see, invasive species, property-wide thinking about invasive species. So you're going to define your management topics. And that's, again, just setting out the units. And we're looking for probably, I would say 4 is up to 4 is pretty common. Beyond that, as you might create them, but you may or may not be able to carry them through the course. I would say 4 I don't worry about. If I see a lot more than that, I would start to get nervous that your project would be kind of big to get through the course. And then the second part, step 1.2, is defining your management goals and objectives. And so just to define these, this is something we had you complete a preliminary version of step 1 as your homework. And these were kind of wide ranging. So we like to review goals and objectives because some people have really specific ones and some people have really vague ones. And so we want to try and get you guys kind of locked into a particular area where we're looking for. So management goals are broad, general statements, usually not quantifiable, that express a desired state or process to be achieved. So these are, your big wishes and dreams, your hopes for the future, thinking long term. And so this can be something about, maintaining a healthy forest composed of a certain forest type. It can be maintaining, or maybe in an urban area, increasing street cover in a particular area, or green space, and increasing forest vegetation. It could be restoring maybe something like watershed or floodplain connectivity. These are things like management goals. They're big ideas. So typically, yeah, each forest type or management topic that you pick is going to have at least one goal. Then from each goal, beneath goals are management objectives. So management objectives are concise statements of measurable results that connect to your goals, and they help you achieve your goals. So you can have one or multiple objectives for each goal. And again, we just don't want you to have a million of these total for your project. So 3 to 12 is total. I would definitely, like 12, I don't worry about. More than that, I start to get a little concerned. So objectives, I got an example coming up. Objectives should be this idea of SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So this is what we can look at as kind of a checklist when we think about, are your objectives written properly? And so here are some examples I pulled from some existing workbooks. So an example here is improve habitat conditions and connectivity for aquatic organisms. So again, the big goal there is connectivity, the key word that we're trying to think about there is connectivity in this aquatic system. So a management objective could be replacing stream crossings that are a barrier to aquatic organism passage with structures that enhance stream connectivity and flood resilience. So there's a discrete action there in terms of how you're going to move forward, and it connects to the goal. And then there's a time frame on that in terms of 15 years. It could be replace 10 stream crossings. That's fine. I will warn you, though, that we don't want it to be, replace the stream crossing at road, at this intersection with a 36-inch culvert, because that's just an action. That's like that's where we're going to get down the line. And so it's sort of a hard balance, but we're trying to get you to identify the type of action you're going to take without being prescriptive of like the checklist of actions of like everything you need to do. And that's a hard thing, but that's going to describe, but that's what we're going for. Another one is, regenerate oak stands that are declining or are susceptible to decline in the near future. And then the person working on this wanted to establish 191 acres of seedling sapling stands with at least 50% oak. So you can see how that connects back. And it's specific, measurable, time-bound. We got that 20-year time frame. So it meets the SMART piece. But again, we're not getting overly prescriptive by saying, what silvicultural system we're using and all the contract specifications, because that's more specific than we need to be at this stage. And we'll eventually get there through some of the other work, but jumping too far ahead can cause some problems. And then one more example, just the last one, reducing invasive species cover, going from 10% cover or 50% cover to, no more than 5. All right. Yep, so anyway, this is just something, so as you go through the adaptation workbook, you'll want to revisit the goals and objectives that you initially submitted, and then just kind of rethink them with this particular framework. Again, you can look in the Forest Adaptation Resources document or the slide notes to see those details, so you can tighten yours up however they need to be, how they might need to be, just tweaked a little bit. All right, and then let's see here. Great, and then just things to keep in mind, use goals and objectives you already have. Our hope is by having you pick a real world project, is you probably have some of this. You may already have it in a management plan or some other document. So definitely don't feel like you need to recreate the wheel on this one. Again, you did this in step 1, or you submitted this as part of your registration, so just tighten those up and think about how they'll fit for the class. If you need to, again, feel like you have a big project and just kind of narrow it a little bit, pick a chunk to work on, that will be fine. These don't need to be related to climate change. So we don't want to see, and I didn't see much of it in the goal in what you guys submitted, so I'm not too worried about it. But what we have sometimes is people will say that they have a goal that they want to build resilience to climate change. And that gets really circular as you go through it, because what we're trying to do is think about, what are those benefits you want from your ecosystem, whether it's wildlife or water quality or timber or, whatever those things are. And we want to help you get there through climate change. So we don't want, I want my forest or ecosystem to be adapted to climate change as a goal, because we can't help you get there as easily, if that makes sense. It gets kind of circular. And then, yep, goals and objectives can be area-wide or specific to a topic or land use. You'll see this when you go through the workbook, but you can either put a goal across your entire project area, or you can associate it with a particular management unit. And then again, the goals and objectives, we really want you to stretch and be thinking about the long time frame. So one of the ways I can tell is that if a management objective is too specific, is if your time frame is like in 2 years, because that pretty much tells me you already know what you want to do, and it's a little hard to evaluate that for climate change because you are going to do it in the next 2 years. So again, make sure your goals are really thinking, out 30, 50, 100 years. Your objectives, really try and push your thinking out, 10, 20 or more years as much as you're kind of able to think about what direction we want to be thinking about that. And that makes it hard, makes it easier to bring the climate change piece in. So, questions on that?
Okay. Thanks, Maria. I'm going to share my screen right now. We are a little bit over in time. I gave you guys some warnings about that. It's 10:40. Right now, we're going to transition into that walkthrough of the adaptation workbook. So if you need to get going, it's okay if you sign off right now, but I'll try to keep this brief so that you have a little bit of an understanding before you get going. So if you can hang on for another 5-10 minutes, we'll be done. So any questions before we begin the adaptation workbook tutorial? Okay, I'm getting some questions on chat, so just keep chatting us and we'll be there to help you. Okay, so let's look at the Adaptation Workbook online platform. It really is a platform. This is a pretty big, it's not even just a website, it's actually a single page application. Maria and I had to learn a whole bunch about computer programming to be a part of taking that print version of the Adaptation Workbook and making it into an online platform. So, if you have any feedback related to your experience in the Adaptation Workbook online, we would really be happy to hear that. And that's a question that we'll be asking you at the end of the course as well. So keep that in mind. It's something we're still crafting over these years since I think 2016. So, we've been at it for a while, but we're not done with it yet. All right, so step one, here you are. Maria did an awesome job explaining a little bit about the step, the adaptation workbook step one, the intentions, what it is that we're trying to do. But now, after you do that work, that hard thinking work, drink lots of coffee, you'll want to take that information and start migrating it over to the online adaptation workbook. Many of you, I think, have already begun bringing projects in, but for those that haven't, we're going to start from the very beginning. So once you get to our website, it looks like this box on the left. When you get there, you will want to use one of the green buttons to use the workbook, or go up to the top white bar that says My Account, and that's when you will create an account. Once you create an account, you will receive an email, sort of an auto response email that will let you know that we've got your username, your information, and you have to click a link in order to sort of validate that you did create this account. If you didn't get that email, check your spam folder. It's really common that that stuff just gets funneled right into spam. So take a look at that folder before contacting us, because 9 times out of 10, that's where that lives. If you can't find it, we'll resend it to you. Okay, so for those that made it into the adaptation workbook, you'll see a screen that looks something like this, which is a pretty blank white screen, and that's because you haven't done anything yet. So what we'll want you to do is go down to the orange box on the bottom right-hand corner that says Add a Project. And when you do that, a little pop-up will appear. You might have to scroll a little bit to see it. I had this problem this morning. And this screenshot is from last year, but what we'll ask you to do is select a project for Adaptation Planning and Practices 2020. You're really going to want to do that in order to be part of this course. Otherwise, you won't see the homework and you might just get lost. And it'll be really hard for you to copy and paste everything into a new project if you haven't already started down that path. So if you started a standard project, go back out, start a new project under our course name. Once you start a project, you will be asked to tell us where that project is. And this screen can be a little complicated. The big thing to remember is that you want to hover over the map. You can zoom into your location and you'll click your project location. Once you click somewhere on the map, a little pin will appear. You can drag that pin. So sometimes, I'm just like messing around and I just pop, I click the map and then I'm like, oh no, that's not where I wanted to put my project. You can zoom in and you can pull that little pin wherever you want. That information is sort of detailed at the top of the map, but it can be easy to overlook it. Once you apply your location, your pin, we'll ask you to create a name, create a description, tell us a little bit about the acreage and the ownership. And then you will select your focus area. And Maria referred to this earlier as far as the adaptation strategies and approaches, something that we'll talk about in step 4. But at this point, this is where you'll want to decide, are you really focusing on forest, silviculture, managing forests and natural resources in a rural area? Or do you have the urban forest focus? Or do you have a forested watershed focus? You can preview what each of these menus look like on the homepage of our website and get a sense of what those major topics are. But this is where you'll really set set yourself down a certain road. And I think we can go back in time and change it, but I'm not 100% sure. So once you're done filling out those details, you can exit the screen by pressing OK. Then you'll get to your project dashboard. And for you, you'll have maybe one project listed at the top. Maybe for those who are returning, you'll have many more projects like this listed. Whenever you want to go and skip around to any of your projects, you just click on that left-hand side and then you go to the orange box. Orange is our action color. So whenever you see orange in the adaptation workbook, it usually is indicating you're going to do something. So here you're going to say, I want to go to the workbook. I want to get out of here. You can click that orange button. If you're curious what is in store for you related to this course and all of the homework, if you maybe misplaced your Getting Started guide, you can find all of those course materials here. There's a little button that says View Course Materials, and a pop-up screen will appear that will give you all of the information and even links to Maria and I. Okay, so then, boom, you get into the adaptation workbook. More white screen. It's very blank. So the first thing that will appear is a welcome screen. And this will give you some introductory information about the online course, maybe even give you an opportunity to go and view some of our adaptation demonstration projects like Maria mentioned. We've got some of our more famous ones listed there. But if you don't want to see this welcome screen, we encourage you just to press that Don't Show This Again button. Otherwise, use that orange action button to get started. Next, you'll see this screen that will show you what is happening in this step in relation to the course. So you'll see all of the dates and the times that we're meeting. Again, this is an old screenshot, but there's an updated one for you now. If you'd like to get rid of that, just press this little up symbol and you'll see another set of instructions. This set of instructions are the ones that you'll commonly see if you're not enrolling into one of our courses. So if you just come back, you want to do the adaptation workbook for another project, this is what you'll see. And one very important thing to point out here is that every step has a video tutorial to remind you how, what you can do within each step and how to operate the adaptation workbook. It can be complicated, especially if you're not coming back to it frequently. So here's a little key box to help you remember what all of these symbols mean. But again, more importantly, that little arrow means it will move the screen away. And then what you will finally see after getting through 3 pop-ups uh, is the progress summary. This is your project dashboard. So this is a really cool piece of the online adaptation workbook, and it's a nice summary of where you're at. What have you completed in each of the steps? What might you want to return to? You'll see this little symbol, this red caution symbol will identify places that you need to keep working on, and it only identifies places you haven't been to. So once you've already gone to one of these steps, it will disappear. You can return to this at any time. This is the progress summary, and you can click on a step and it will take you, or it'll show a little summarized version of what you've done there. Okay, but you might want to get rid of that, so you can minimize the left panel, or you can go directly to step 1. And you can go to step 1 down here as well. Once you get to step 1.1, where we will define our management topics, again, you'll see the course materials. And again, you can just click to hide those or use the down arrow to see them at your convenience. So this section, as Maria outlined, is really an opportunity for you to start describing what are those pieces, what are those main, habitat units or forest types or the urban cover types that you're working within. How are you beginning to describe the place and the project that you've brought to this course? As Maria mentioned, we do have some preloaded forest types and management topics, depending on wherever you've dropped your region. And these will have more relevancy in the next step, but they're very convenient. So if you are thinking in the concept of forest types, feel free to just use this little addition sign to add it to your property. Once you do that, it will appear on the right-hand side. For those, this came up in the chat box, for those that would like to add their own custom type or management topic, there is a little, again, that action button is there for you to do that yourself. And so you can add whatever that management topic is. Maybe it's, hemlock woolly adelgid response in the south corner of my site, or wildlife habitat for, ruffed grouse. Whatever it is, it's an option for you to describe. That once you click that box, you will see this pop-up box that will ask you for the title of that management topic. And then as you can see here, we do provide a little bit of teaser text to get you thinking about what should go in that description box. So, you can describe whatever that management topic is, but then you can also add a link. So if there is something really important, maybe it's a green space in a park, well, you can add a link to that green space so that when this appears in your management plan, somebody can jump to more information about that topic, and it might relieve a little stress in having to fully describe it here. So next, after you've decided upon a few of maybe these, you've selected the preloaded or you've come up with your own, you'll see those appear in this right-hand side column of step 1. Next, you'll move into step 1.2. And this will sort of naturally occur as you press next on the bottom of the screen. So this is where we take those pieces and start making it part of a greater story and following many of those tricks and tools that Maria presented as far as how we're thinking about goals and objectives. This is where you'll apply that thinking. So you have an opportunity to state property-wide goals, but then you can also list specific goals for whatever those forest types or management topics are, because we want to allow as much flexibility as possible, and we know that everyone might be thinking about their projects in very different ways. So we're allowing you to apply individual goals and objectives for whatever the units are that you would like in your project area. How you do this is go over to that action unit and press add another goal. And maybe you have general goals for the property and they apply to some of those management units that you've described. Well, we'll give you the opportunity just to do essentially a copy paste by pressing a button that says no and yes. Does this goal apply to this management topic? Yes. You can add an objective as well. So once you add a goal, you can add an objective. And we have created it so that they do appear as like a goal and objective set so that they are linked together. And the objective box appears once you click that button, and you can then, add your concise statement and your time frame, as Maria mentioned earlier. And that's pretty much it. So I've sort of slammed through that pretty quickly, but you'll see once you get into the adaptation workbook that it is pretty, it's a natural movement from each step, and it can be difficult at times, but we think that you'll be able to figure it out. And if you cannot figure it out, look at those online tutorials and then contact Maria or I for more assistance if you need it. At the end of each step, because it is a course, we'll have a little homework section, and the homework is really meant just to get like a 1 to 3 sentence summary of whatever it is that you did. And sometimes we'll have a little bubble continuum here where we'll ask you a question and you can rate if you would agree or disagree, and maybe some other questions. And again, these homeworks really help us pull together some raw data that we can use to help summarize where people are at, and it's really helpful throughout each of the learning exercises in lecture and in discussion. So with that, if there's any questions, please email me regarding the adaptation workbook. And like Maria said, your assignment for next time is to follow along with your Getting Started guide, do the flip grid. We'll talk about this in discussion. But most importantly, complete your step 1 of the adaptation workbook, complete your homework, and begin some way of keeping track of your attendance for your CFEs or CEUs. And looking ahead, we'll see you next Tuesday, January 28th. The lecture will introduce step 2 and will be led by one of our colleagues. And the discussion activity for next week will ask you to describe your project in 3 keywords. And again, we'll talk about this in our discussion session. But for now, thank you. Thanks for hanging on for a little bit longer than expected. And have a great week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
It's like, how's she saying bye? She's on in 5 minutes.
See you in 3 minutes.
Yeah, stay in this room if you are supposed to be here for the following discussion session.
And I will.
Go ahead.
Oh, and I'll see the Wednesday people, same room, but tomorrow.
All right, I'm going to go on mute so I can go to the bathroom, and I'll see you in a little bit.